Good evening. Thanks for coming out on a really beautiful night. I would like to introduce our candidates. They have drawn for position prior to the meeting. First one is Jim Hanson. Then we have Jaime, Webbe, Brian Wilson, and Jane Thornthwaite. And unfortunately, Mr. Smith, the Green candidate, has not arrived as yet. I'm Lorraine Harvey. I'm the chair of the Seymour Community Association, and this meeting is being sponsored by the two community associations out here, Seymour and Blue Ridge, along with Seymour United Church, Parkgate Community Center, and the Chamber of Commerce. So the people who are helping here tonight from Seymour are Bill Tracy, who's wandering around by the piano, John Hunter, Karen Garnett, and from Blue Ridge we have Eric Anderson and Al Cockle on the timer. And Carol Ann Reynolds is running around here from Seymour, or from Parkgate, she's at the back. And I'm not quite sure if there's anybody here from the community, or from the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Oh, Louise and Gail, hi, there you are at the back. The candidates will now have the chance to make their opening statements, and they will not interrupt one another or speak to another's opening statements. So first up is Mr. Hanson. So you can come here or you can sit there, whatever you like. Okay.
Hi there. I'm Jim Hanson, and I'm very proud to be your BC NDP candidate in North Vancouver, Seymour. Thank you to the Tsleil-Waututh Nation on whose ancestral lands this meeting is taking place. Thank you to the organizers of this important community event. And most importantly, thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time on this hot summer's night to come out and ensure that you see and hear from each of your candidates. So who am I, and why do I want to be your MLA? I was born in Lionsgate Hospital in 1961. I grew up in the local area. I attended Blue Ridge and Windsor Secondary. Then I went to Simon Fraser and graduated from UBC Law School in 1984. I'm a self-employed lawyer. I know what it takes to build a successful business from scratch. I know what it means to have to meet payroll every 2 weeks. My wife is a self-employed realtor right here in North Vancouver. We have 2 children, Robert and Elizabeth, both of whom attend my alma mater, Windsor Secondary. My parents are elderly, and they live in the North Shore, as did my grandparents before them. When I had to confront a major issue which exists in this constituency, in this riding, namely the expansion of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, whether we should have oil tankers every day going back and forth through the eastern waters of Burrard Inlet, I remember the North Shore of my childhood. Some of my earliest memories being with my mother in the beach, Kate's Park, and my childhood excitement at the sea life. I've always enjoyed the nature of this beautiful area, and I want nothing less for our children and our grandchildren. And that's why I asserted my influence on my political party to say no to the extension of Kinder Morgan. So why do I want to be your MLA? Well, ladies and gentlemen, over the last 12 years, I've watched the priorities and practices of the BC Liberal government, and I know we can do better. I believe that my background as a lawyer, as a businessman, and as a father equips me to make a contribution in government, and I look forward to asserting my influence on your behalf in a new and better provincial government. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start just by echoing Jim's thanks, which as the person who had to go first, I think he's taken care of for all of us. So thank you very much, Jim, for thanking everyone on our behalf. My name is Jaime Webbe, and I am your independent candidate. The first time there's been an independent candidate on the ballot here for 12 years. For the past 7 years, I've worked for the United Nations Environment Program. I worked on looking at the impacts of climate change on species and ecosystems. Prior to that, I worked at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. on sustainable land management projects in sub-Saharan Africa. I grew up here in Lee Cove. In fact, I went to Sherwood Park Elementary. And I was so happy when I had my 2 little boys, Sebastian and Alexandre, to be able to move back to the North Shore to move back to North Vancouver in order to raise them here as well. I'm running as an independent because I think it should matter who the candidate is. I think that candidates need to be seen as individuals, not just as representatives of their parties. Since 2001, there have been more than 32,000 votes cast in the legislature. Of that, about 1/4% were people voting against their party leader. So what does that mean for you as a voter? It means that your MLA has never voted against Christy Clark, regardless of the best interests of the riding. As an independent, every vote I would cast in the legislation, if I was elected, would be in the best interest of the riding and of British Columbians. I would provide a rationale for every single vote that I cast and explain to you why I made my decision. I would be accountable to you. The other advantage of being independent is that I can agree with whichever party I can present the best policies. That means that I agree with the NDP on their proposal for an independent advocate for seniors' rights. I also agree with the NDP in opposing the Kinder-Morgan pipeline, although perhaps I should say that they agree with me because I did speak out against it first. On the other hand, I agree with the Liberals on the $1,200 RESP grant for every child under 6. As well as stronger state relationships with Asia, and they can count on my support for that. As an independent candidate, I also support stronger rights for disabled persons, including the appointment of an independent advocate for disabled persons. And I want a long-term vision for British Columbia in which we work together with industry to make them world leaders in sustainability initiatives. Thank you.
My name is Brian Wilson. Thanks to all of you for coming out on such a lovely evening to listen to people you love to hate, politicians. First, I'd like to thank Lorraine Harvey for emceeing tonight, and I'd like to thank the Church, Chamber of Commerce, Blue Ridge and Seymour Community Association's Parkgate Community Center for their sponsorship of this evening's events. I'd like to thank my fellow candidates as well for the opportunity to meet and debate, as this is truly democracy in action. I'm not running for MLA because I'm attracted to a paycheck or a pension. I'm running because I'm very disappointed in the current government in Victoria, and I feel that we need some Conservatives in Victoria to fix it. Like you, I live in the real world, the productive world. I'm working really, really hard, trying to make a go of it. I own a small business, and just like thousands of other businesses in BC that make up the backbone of our economy, I understand the pressures of being an employer. The bureaucratic and tax burdens on people like me are daunting. So why the BC Conservative Party? To me, it was clear that a man of John Cummins' integrity and experience, having won 5 consecutive federal elections and spending 18 years in Parliament in Ottawa, would bring some real credibility to the Conservative cause in BC. BC desperately needed a viable Conservative option on the ballot, and now there is one. One that is truly a free enterprise, right-of-centre party instead of pretending to be one, as the BC Liberals often do. I find it so hard sometimes to tell the difference between the NDP and the BC Liberals that the only vote splitting I see going on here is amongst my colleagues here on the stage. I understand the frustration and desire for change, but it has to be the right change. We cannot revert back to the NDP just because we can no longer stomach the Liberals. They drove us into the ground in the 1990s, which resulted in BC becoming a federal have-not province for the first time in history. And make no mistake about it, Adrian Dix was there as a part of that. Are we condemned to seesaw back and forth as we have been for 20 years or more? I offer you real change and a breath of fresh air, fiscal responsibility, accountability, and common sense. You can be assured that I will always respect your tax dollars because they're my tax dollars too. I know that real positive change can begin right here, right now, in North Vancouver, Seymour, and I would be very proud to represent this riding in Victoria. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Jane Thornthwaite, and I've been your MLA for the last 4 years. Before that, I was on the school board. I have 3 children, Two of whom are actually here with me today, graduated from Windsor Secondary. The other one is in grade 9 at Windsor. I've lived in the riding for 23 years, and I am North Shore born and raised. I actually grew up in West Van and then moved to North Van. I love my job. I think I have the best job on earth because I love helping people. For 22 years, I was a dietitian. And as anybody in the healthcare field knows, that's definitely a helping profession. So why did I run for school board? Well, I volunteered a lot for my children's schools, for the District Parent Advisory Council, for the soccer, both girls and boys, and I was even the zone watch coordinator for Block Watch for Blue Ridge. I'd spent a lot of time within the riding, within the community, volunteering my services. And I had a lot of time to spend in my children's schools. And there were some things that were going on that I didn't really quite like. So as opposed to complaining on the sidelines about what was going on, I decided to run. And I ran in 2005 so that I could make a difference for my children and my children's education. And then in 2009, when my predecessor had to resign due to health reasons very quickly, I stepped up to the plate and ran as your MLA. And since I've been your MLA, I have been consistently voting in the legislature and representing my constituents 100% of the time. And I can tell you, with the BC Liberals, a lot of the MLAs do vote against the government bills. That's a fact. We're allowed to do that. And I have represented your community and your individuals and your families when I was in school board, as well as when I was at MLA. I'm accountable. I'm out there every day. You see me every day representing you. I provide monthly MLA reports for you so that if you sign up, you can come and learn exactly what I'm doing. I'm also very accessible, and I have those monthly, bi-monthly Join Jane coffee meetings that many of you here have attended. I'm very, very out there and willing to meet with you. And for that reason, and because I think that I've done an excellent job of representing you, I would like to continue that work for you as your MLA. And I would thank you very much for your consideration. Thanks.
And now we will start the prepared questions. The first one will go to Jim, and then each candidate will have 1 minute to rebut or to add their own perspective on the question. So, here we go. Should British Columbia compete with other provinces by offering additional incentives to keep movie and television production here? And if so, how and why?
Thank you. And the answer, of course, is yes. We need a competitive tax system if we're going to compete on the world stage. Otherwise, we will find that other jurisdictions exceed beyond us. They will get the business that we don't get. I know I've met a lot of film workers, and I know that it's satisfying work, it's well-paid work, it's work that allows people to raise families. It's clean work and it's non-polluting and it's sustainable, and it's exactly the kind of work we want to have in British Columbia, right here in North Vancouver, Seymour. And that's why BC NDP is proposing to increase the labour tax credit to 40%, which will render us competitive with the other jurisdictions. It makes no sense to have a tax system that isn't competitive with other jurisdictions and then just have the business go elsewhere. We all lose. And that's why the BC NDP has the policy, and we can all benefit. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of discussion about this while I've been out in the riding, and I've heard two...
Closer to the mic.
Can I take it out? Or?
Yeah, pick it up.
Try that. Yeah, so I've heard a lot of discussion about this, and still not voting enough.
No, pick it up and speak closely to the mic. Thank you.
The lights are on.
I like to know already. I agree. So, no, I've heard a lot of discussion about two things, racing to the bank and racing to the bottom when it comes to tax incentives for film and industry. I happen to agree with my NDP colleague on this. I think that no other industry in BC employs such a vast array of professionals, from carpenters to actors to artists, and I think it's a very profitable industry for BC. I think we need to do what we can to make sure that those students that are studying arts and film have an opportunity to find jobs once they graduate. So I 100% support the NDP's position on the tax credits for film industry and film and TV. Thank you.
Hi. The film business in BC has maintained its competitiveness within the global market because of the provincial tax incentive program, whereby a substantial portion of the wages paid to British Columbian film workers or by foreign companies is later returned in the form of a rebate. It's not a subsidy. In recent years, many other jurisdictions throughout the world have not only followed this program, but they've increased the incentives to the point where BC is quickly losing business. And it's not just that a film worker here in BC can move to Ontario, where a lot of work is right now, because you have to actually be a resident in Ontario in order to take advantage of that rebate for at least 6 months. So once that business goes somewhere else, it's gone. It's important to understand that we're talking about new money within our economy. It's foreign money. Without the provincial tax incentive program rebate, the net of $1 billion a couple of years ago added to our economy would have gone to another jurisdiction. It's as simple as that. So long as increasing the tax incentive program for the motion picture industry results in a net gain for the province of BC, it must be supported, and I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jane, and I'd like to just give you a little history about my work with the film industry. And I know that one of my constituents is here, but I don't know where she is, but I know that she walked in. Gina had taken me on the set of the Bait Motel at one point a few months ago, and I got a first-hand look at what they actually do, and also the benefits to the school district, which I thought was quite interesting. Subsequently, and after several meetings that I did arrange not only with my colleagues in Victoria, but also directly with the Minister Bill Bennett, we had some very fruitful discussions. And what we determined is, in addition to the $330 million this year that the provincial government has given in tax credits for the film industry, is that we could do more. But one of the things that we really need to work on, and this is what the Minister and I and many of my supportive colleagues have agreed on, is we have to do a better job of convincing the Ministry of Finance of the direct but indirect jobs. My fellow that assisted me in my campaign, his family runs a printing business. He prints stuff for Lionsgate Studios, but that business from his printing business is not included in that. It doesn't give credit to the film industry. So I absolutely support more support for the film industry and to assist the film industry in having a better business case to the Ministry of Finance so we can improve the tax credits that we have right now. Thank you.
Our next question will be answered first by Jaime. And it is, housing affordability is a major concern for residents of all ages, whether they are renting or hope to be homeowners. This issue impacts the younger generation starting out and extends through to providing housing options and alternatives for our seniors. How can you, and it says on your party, there's one, make a positive difference in creating housing options and housing alternatives to improve housing affordability in Metro Vancouver and in Seymour?
Thank you. Yes, I am very familiar with this issue, having recently moved back to Deep Cove and discovered the affordability issue. And I think that this is one of those issues where we really need to look at the relationship between our provincial government and our municipalities. Affordable housing is an issue that cuts across levels of government. And we need to start sitting down and talking in a more collaborative and cooperative manner between the provincial government and municipalities to look at how provincial funding can be best used at the municipal level in order to provide affordable housing. In order to do this, I think we need to... Is that the red light on? Is that my red light already?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Okay, okay, so yeah, I'll just leave it there then.
Housing. Unfortunately, the real estate market is market-driven. So what do? You can set aside land and get the municipalities and the province together and build some co-op housing perhaps for this particular riding. But it is a very, very tough situation. I know it's very tough to expect our kids to be able to afford a house these days around here is pretty tough. So we have to grow the economy. We have to get better paying jobs. We have to, that's the only way. We have to get more money coming in and better jobs so that people can afford to actually live here. Thank you.
I agree with both Jamie and Brian. First of all, Jamie's right that the relationship between the municipalities and the provincial government is paramount. And I know after being in the legislature for 4 years that this provincial government has done a significant amount of affordable housing, not just for seniors, but for all vulnerable people, particularly in the city of Vancouver. The city of Vancouver has benefited a lot from the Housing BC program, affordable housing, rental assistance, and other programs that are available to all citizens in need. We've also seen very, very good signs in the city of North Vancouver. Where I attended 2 openings of 2 affordable housing units as well. I would like, if elected again, to further that work with the provincial government, Housing BC, as well as the municipality of the District of North Vancouver to ensure that we can do the equal amount here in North Vancouver, Seymour.
Thank you. When I have been campaigning over the last many months, I have heard often the concern from North Vancouverites that the price of housing relative to the price of their children's potential earnings makes it very hard for them to continue the way of life here in North Vancouver. I grew up with my grandparents. My children are growing up with their grandparents. I have to wonder, can my children live in this community and raise their children near me? It is a very important issue. First thing I have to say, and I have to agree with my Conservative colleague, the BC NDP understands we live in a market economy and there's going to be supply and demand dynamics. But the solution lies in better jobs. And as long as we're doing things like having ferries built in Europe instead of right here in North Vancouver, there's no way that our young people have a chance.
Brian Wilson will have the first kick at this question. If elected, what opportunities are there in the North Vancouver Seymour riding where you can make a positive contribution as an MLA?
One of the most pressing issues, one of the first issues I would like to tackle in our riding is the poorly designed and outdated highway coming off the Second Narrows Bridge, which effectively cuts North Vancouver in half and cuts us off from the rest of the North Shore. There was a report that our current MLA signed off on, an agreement that would have, amongst other things, eliminated the mountain highway exit westbound and forced everyone needing to go into Lynn Valley to exit at the top of the cut onto William. The proposal would have effectively backed up traffic onto local streets and off of the highway. The Highways Department loved it, District Hall not so much. So the district ripped apart that proposal and demonstrated how bad an idea it was, and it was scrapped. There's now a committee in place that is working on a redesign of all the access and egress points in order to alleviate the bottlenecks. And I have my own ideas on this, which I hope to share with them when I'm elected. Thank you.
The Fern Street overpass, Highway number 1 interchange, has been my number 1 transportation priority since getting elected. In fact, I live there, here. I live east of Seymour. I live, eat, and breathe that traffic nightmare every single day. So I definitely appreciate that stuff has to get done. And so what I've started to do, and I've got a very good relationship with the Ministry of Transportation, And the meetings that Brian referred to have been put on the map for the Ministry of Transportation to resolve this issue. And obviously, right now, they're right in the middle of these meetings that are not just the experts, but also the people from the Lynn Valley Community Association, Parkgate, Mount Seymour Association, etc. These people have been meeting on a regular basis to come to a solution on what needs to be done. And whatever needs to be done, if it's widening that Fern Street overpass, doing a flyover, whatever the case may be, I will be for sure fighting for you and the money that we need from the Ministry of Transportation to resolve this issue. In addition to the additional 3-tower development that the district has proposed for Sealand, that needs to be dealt with as well, and I'll be working with them on that.
I'd like to direct our attention to the issue of Capilano University, right here in our constituency of North Vancouver, Seymour. The BC NDP believes, and I think everyone in the room believes, that the future for our young people is training and education to get the skilled jobs that are available in the future of British Columbia, and then perhaps they can afford the housing which is here in the North Shore. And yet, this government has cut advanced education funding by 2.5%, or $70 million. The only absolute cut in their budget was from advanced education, leading to closures of whole programs at CapU, and I never heard a word. I never heard a word from our MLA in protest.
Jamie, you want to answer this question for the first time? Oh, sorry, Jamie, I missed you. Sorry.
That's okay. Yes, I have 3 issues that are really important to me in the riding. The first is increasing funding to help seniors stay in their homes. Right now, the government has a Better at Home program with a total funding over 5 years of $20 million. Compare that to a similar program in Nova Scotia with funding of $22 million for 1 year. And bear in mind that BC has 4 seniors for every 1 in Nova Scotia, and I think we need to be looking at our funding model on that. The second, I want to keep tankers out of Burrard Inlet. And the third is, as with Jim, I think we need to look at these cuts at Capilano University, and I think we need to look at how we can have a government that's allowed to run a deficit, but an academic institution that isn't. I think that's not the right funding model for our schools and our universities and our children. Thank you.
Jamie. Downloading has created huge challenges for local government that, unlike the province, are prohibited from running deficits. What is your position on the province taking back responsibility for major expenditures like TransLink, and why do you have that opinion?
I support the Mayor's Council and their solutions for TransLink. Everybody knows that we need to find new funding sources for TransLink. And the Mayor's Council has written to the Ministry of Transportation and has proposed several either solutions, and that could be road pricing or vehicle levies or whatever. But I believe that, and Richard Walton is not only our mayor here, but he's also the head of the Mayor's Council, and I believe his solution is a good one. In other words, we have to get not just the provincial government, but all of the metro mayors and council working together along with the bureaucrats who are the specialists in transportation and metro transportation working together, and that's what's being proposed by the Mayor's Council, and I think that they've got a good solution going, and that's what I support.
When it comes to transit, it's clear that we need more and better transit. My children are teenagers, and often it's necessary for them to be driven or to drive simply because the buses don't run at the right hours. And it's obviously in our interest in terms of environmental conservation, greenhouse gas emissions, and just in terms of creating a livable society to have transit that works. And that's why the BC NDP has a policy of redirecting the carbon tax to green initiatives, including expanded transit. So that's the solution. It's going to have to be paid for one way or another, and an excellent place to start would be to redirect the carbon tax, make the carbon tax the program which it was intended to be, a tax which then the proceeds from which are used to improve our society through green initiatives and better transit. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree that TransLink needs more funding, and I think we should explore the Mayor's Council's options further, but not until there's been a serious overhaul of the administration of TransLink. But I think downloading a deficit is actually much more serious when you're looking at schools, healthcare, and universities. For schools and healthcare, I'm sick and tired of education relying on this endless cycle of care and fundraisers. Schools and healthcare should be funded based on need, not based on what's available. I think that downloading a deficit to schools and healthcare is doing a disservice to every single person in this province. The province needs to take responsibility for longer-term fiscal management in order to be able to ensure the schools and healthcare are adequately funded every single year. Universities, I think that universities, since they do actually bring in an income as well, should be allowed to run a deficit the same way that our government is. They should be held accountable for their long-term financial management, but I think we should put the same trust in the financial managers of our universities that we do in the financial managers of our government. Thank you.
It's going to be pretty hard to address the downloading issue until the province's finances are fixed. They are an absolute mess, so is TransLink. The people in TransLink don't respect our taxpayer dollars quite obviously. They had a meeting in North Vancouver a while back. They could have done it at Municipal Hall free of charge, but instead they spent over $2,000 at the Pinnacle Hotel and had it catered. You know, would we do that? Would you and I do that? Crazy. Downloading. Yeah, it's not a good thing, obviously. As far as the hospitals go and that I don't know whether we can, we have to obviously use what's available. The medical system in BC takes over 50% of every taxpayer dollar. 50%. So less than 50% is left over to fund education and infrastructure and everything else that government has to do. Think of that. We got to find better solutions in how we spend our money, and that's what the BC Conservatives want to do.
We will now move to your questions. Each candidate, if they're addressed to a particular candidate, we will do that. If they're addressed to all candidates, they can all answer. So this one is a general question, and I will start with Jim on my left. Amalgamation is a local issue. Amalgamation of the district and city. Would you bring forth this issue for a referendum if you are the MLA?
Well, as a lawyer, I'm not sure of what the legalities would be regarding amalgamation, and whether it seems to me that the BC legislature would have the power to impose amalgamation through the Municipalities Act, so I don't see that it necessarily requires a referendum. Perhaps a referendum would be a starting point, I don't know. But let me say as a matter of principle, and as a North Vancouverite, a lifetime North Vancouverite, amalgamation to me makes an awful lot of sense. And it makes an awful lot of sense to unite the city and the district such that the community plan can proceed in a way that's cohesive and takes into account all the elements. As it currently stands, by dividing the city and the district, the development path is to some degree distorted by the needs of the district to end up with community centres. However, the BC NDP has no position, and I'm only speaking and providing my private views. Thank you.
Thank you. This is actually, I like this question. When I was at the World Bank, we spent all our effort focusing on decentralization. Then I moved over to the United Nations and I discovered the buzzword there was amalgamation. So it's a little bit of a shift for the way I saw things. I mean, it is a case-by-case basis, and certainly I would want to sit down and look at every single one of the issues. I've had some very passionate doorstep conversations with people on both sides of this argument, and I absolutely think there needs to be more discussion, more awareness raising at the level of the community about what the implications of amalgamation would be in terms of services and tax base. And then we can start having a dialogue, and absolutely I would support a referendum on the issue after there's been this information exchange and some awareness raising. Yeah.
Who thinks their property taxes should go up? You want to pay more, do you? Okay. I'll take your name down. Can you believe between the city and district of North Vancouver, there's 135,000 people, and we have 2 completely separate municipalities? That is crazy. Even if we had 250. Thank you. We have 2 beautiful city halls. We have 2 mayors, we have 2 councils, we have 2 very well-paid city managers, and all the bureaucracy that goes with that under them. Completely redundant. Complete waste of taxpayers' dollars. One of my first things that I want to do when elected is to get a referendum happening. The provincial government can order it if there's enough of a will amongst the constituents. I will definitely advocate for that. We've got to get this under control. Thank you.
I support a referendum and I support amalgamation of the district and the city.
This one is directed to Mr. Hanson, and it will be answered only by him unless one of the other candidates wish to use one of their yellow wild cards. They will have 3. It's yours, though. Why is the NDP advocating a return to a card-based union certification system which makes it easier for unions to certify workplaces without all employees hearing the facts? Will you support the secret ballot?
I support card check certification. Our society has a crisis, and it's a crisis that's at the verge of tearing us asunder. The crisis is the disparity between the very rich and the rest of us. And unions play an important role in strengthening our society, strengthening social services, and creating balance and equality throughout our society. Under the BC Liberals, we've seen a weakening of labour policy and labour laws. And that's hurt all of us because it's created challenges that aren't necessary. We can level the playing field for all of the elements of our society. And card check certification is an easier, more expeditious way to certify a union and levels the playing field, and I support it.
So you're saying that you do not support the secret ballot?
I support card check certification.
He does not support the secret ballot. The problem with that is that unions are very intimidating, and workers feel intimidated by... Let me give you an example of what happened in the legislature. The LPNs, licensed practical nurses, because they're very, very similar in their practice to RNs, wanted to join the BCNU. And they approached the BCNU, and the BCNU agreed, and they wanted the LPNs to come under the bargaining structure. The NDP did not allow that to happen. Why? Because the LPNs were under a different union. The BC Liberals supported the LPNs to come under the same bargaining structure as the RNs because that's what they wanted to do. And that's what I believe in.
I believe in the secret ballot. Unions do have a place in our society. I'm an ex-union man myself. That might sound funny coming from a conservative, but it's true. Thank you.
You're going to have to give me that yellow card.
I want to make sure everyone in the room is aware of what card check certification is. It's a somewhat technical issue of labour law because there's been a misinformation put forward, I believe, by my colleague with respect to intimidation and some such thing. Card check certification simply means that if a majority of the members of a bargaining union agree to join a union, sign a card and join that union, then the matter is then certified. A second stage of the certification procedure isn't necessary, namely a secondary secret ballot. And this is a point that we should be looking throughout our society. We should be simplifying procedures. We should be finding more expeditious ways to get the job done and not adding layers and layers of process and procedure. And the secret ballot, if in fact there's card check certification, everyone's agreed they want to be in the union, why add one more layer, have a secret ballot vote instead of, it's just unnecessary. There's no intimidation involved. Everyone joins the union, they sign their card. That's all that's meant by card check certification, and I support it.
This question goes to Mr. Wilson. Do you believe an MLA should act solely in the interests of their constituents, or do you recognize a current and growing need for a more holistic assessment of our social and environmental problems?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand that, but
It's a bit, anyway.
I'm going to take it that question means, am I a trained SEAL? And I would say no. John Cummins has made it very clear that he wants a caucus full of mavericks. He was a maverick in Ottawa. He was known to be a maverick in Ottawa, and he wants his people to be mavericks as well. So where I agree with the party line, fine, but I am here to represent you, the constituents, not the party. Thank you.
Okay, so this one goes to Jane. What plans do you have for the child care subsidy?
We have a very good early learning strategy, and there's actually 3 components. One is to increase childcare spaces. The other is to improve the quality of the childcare. And we've also proposed a provincial office for childcare to assist not only in education of early childhood educators, but also to assist in matching the need to the availability. So early learning is a very prominent part of the BC Liberal platform. We brought forward all-day kindergarten, which has been very, very successful, and also the Strong Start centers, and they're all over the place in North Vancouver and very successful. So I would continue to support the provincial office for early learning and early childcare spaces.
This one will go to Jamie. Why build ferries when we should be building bridges?
So I'm not a transportation expert. The extent of my shipbuilding experience was a Chamber of Commerce U40 event at C-SPAN where I learned about how they're going to build research vessels, not ferries. I'm not even sure really where to begin with this. Perhaps I'll take it to talk about the BC ferry system. I think that the BC ferry system should not be self-sufficient. I think it's part of the highway system. I do believe that it should be supported by the government. I don't think it should be a user-paid system. In terms of building bridges instead, well, that's an absolutely immense capital expenditure. I don't believe that now is the correct economic time to engage in such a capital expenditure. The Hoover Dam worked back during the Great Depression, but I'm not sure if we really want to start a Hoover Dam here in BC right now. Thank you.
Since I prepared for a question on BC ferries, I'm going to address it. What's going on there is absolutely unbelievable. In fact, all aboard takes on a whole new meaning because there is actually a BC ferry board whose job it is to appoint the members of another BC ferry board. Believe it or not. Not until I became a candidate did I realize that BC Ferries has 3 separate boards. The BC Ferries Board of Directors, which runs the organization, the BC Ferry Authority, whose job it is to appoint the BC Ferries Board of Directors, and the BC Ferry Commission, which regulates fares and service level. Each person serving on these boards is paid, producing no value for ferry riders or taxpayers. You need a conservative government in Victoria to fix this kind of stuff. BC Ferries must be brought back under control of the government. by merging the boards, reducing or eliminating patronage posts, and restoring some level of accountability to BC taxpayers and ferry users.
Your mic is on.
Oh, is it? Thank you.
Mr. Hanson, what do you think about the legalization and taxation of marijuana?
I am 100% in favor of the legalization of marijuana. It is a good policy on a whole bunch of levels. First of all, there's a fundamental human rights issue with respect to differentiating between marijuana and other substances like alcohol, tobacco, which are more harmful. But over and above that, the current policy simply doesn't work. It's like prohibition in the 1930s. And the definition of insanity is continuing a policy that doesn't work when we know it doesn't work. It's a completely failed and utterly disgraced social policy and public policy. And what we need to do is to regulate marijuana, identify and address its harms and social harms and physical health harms, and address means of mitigating those harms and regulating and controlling its use and distribution. To me, that's self-evident.
This is for Jane. With the discussions in BC centered around economic growth and directions, as well as skill shortage and retirements and recruitment issues, people with disabilities offer many skills and training and yet face up to a 90% unemployment rate. What plans does your government have to support the employment of people with disabilities?
I totally agree and support Work BC in their efforts to try to match ability to the job market. And with my experience with the special needs roundtables, when I was first elected, I organized these roundtables in my constituency and talked to experts in the field as well as parents and people with children with disabilities. That did come up. And the transition from moving from age 18 to 19 is difficult, and I don't really agree with the chronological age cutoff. That's one of the reasons why the Children in Reps role has been extended to the age of 24. And I absolutely will work and have continued to work, and I met with some folks actually last week on exactly this issue, on making sure that we have proper training and proper resources available to all children, but in particular for the people with disabilities, so that we can make sure that they're
Your mic is off too.
happy members of society.
Just add, I think we need to look at what's happened with funding under the Liberals for people with disabilities. CLBC, as Jane very well knows, has been reviewed. You referred to that and some of the actions being taken as a result of the review of CLBC. But funding for people with disabilities in BC remains the 6th lowest in Canada. There's been no increase to CLBC, despite the fact that there's a 15% projected increase in caseloads. So I think we need to start looking at putting our money where our mouth is, providing the support that the government says is needed for people with disabilities, putting the money behind it, and really making sure that we're building the capacity amongst disabled people to live as members of the community as they wish. Okay.
This comes from a 10-year-old girl named Jessica, and she wants to ask Mr. Hanson, how do you feel about the poor people who live on the street and the people who think it is okay to be rude? So I think that we should provide a home for them in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a disgrace that we have homeless people in our society. In a culture as wealthy as ours, and I hearken back to the North Vancouver of my childhood. I could go for a walk in the woods without encountering a homeless person. I didn't see a homeless person as I drove my daughter to a synchronized swimming class on Sunday evening and had to face the question after she had had such a fine meal, Daddy, why do we have homeless people? We have no plan at all from this government with respect to homelessness, which has risen and risen and risen under their rule. And I haven't heard a peep, not a word, from our member of the legislature on this issue. We need a poverty reduction plan, and we need it now. And I don't think there's a person in this room that wouldn't agree with me.
This question is for Jaime. What is your policy on supporting natural gas extraction and export by any means possible, which of course includes fracking?
Thank you. I've been learning a lot about fracking recently. And I think we need to really look at both sides of the coin here. I don't believe this pie-in-the-sky projections that the BC Liberals are putting out about LNG being the savior of BC. At the same time, if you look at BC's exports right now, our biggest export in terms of value is coal. If we're replacing coal exports with LNG exports, given that LNG has about 50% of the CO2 emissions, perhaps that might not be such a bad thing. However, both getting coal out of the ground and getting LNG out of the ground requires a significant amount of destruction of the environment, and we need to start looking at the impact, not just on climate, as people often focus on, but also on our own natural resources here in BC. This is a local issue. Fracking is a local issue. It can have very serious detrimental impacts on the water supply. We need to look very, very carefully at those before we proceed. And we need to look at how LNG is going to fit in with an overall sustainable development plan for BC. Yeah.
This one is for Jane. What is your position? What is your position? What is my position? What is your position regarding the proposed Kinder Morgan and Northern Gateway oil pipelines and the corresponding increase in coastal tanker traffic moving Canadian oil to global markets? Is your position for one pipeline different from the other, and if so, why?
The BC Liberal government has five criteria, and the top three are all environmental. The fourth is First Nations, and then the last is economic. Each one has to be met before any heavy oil transportation will be allowed from the provincial government. And when you asked about what the difference was between pipelines and pipelines, I happen to know where our environment minister has been with regards to questioning Enbridge. And he's not getting the right answers. He's not even getting complete answers from even one of those criteria. So Enbridge is not looking very good, I can tell you that. But with regards to Kinder Morgan, we do not have a position on Kinder Morgan yet because we haven't seen the proposal. And I think that it's irresponsible for a sitting government to put forward a position before they've seen a proposal. Because what that does is it scares away investors big time.
I would like to hear from the BC Liberals with respect to their position on Kinder Morgan. Are there circumstances under which they would think that moving large amounts of oil through the eastern corridor of Burrard Inlet is in the interests of North Vancouver Seymour? Is it in the interest of the province? Is that something that would, under some 5 conditions, be seen as a good thing? I was the lawyer for the surviving passengers in the Queen of the North. I know that ships can sink, things fail, things go wrong that you never expect. And I want to hear from my friend a clear position. Are there circumstances under which you would support the expansion by 6 or 8 times the amount of oil that goes through in heavy tankers through our Burrard Inlet right past the shores of Cates Park here in North Vancouver Seymour? If there are conditions or circumstances where that's acceptable to her, I want to hear about it.
To answer that?
How's that fair? Yeah.
How's
that fair?
She has a yellow card.
Wait a minute. He challenged her to come up with an answer. Why should she have to use a yellow card to get an answer to a challenge question? How's that fair?
Jim, you know that there's been tankers in the Burrard Inlet for years. I obviously don't want to become a major port for super tankers, but we do have oil tankers there right now. So we can't put a stop to it. We can control it, but we can't put a stop to it because everybody needs oil. Everybody needs the economic benefit. British Columbians, all here, everybody here needs the economic benefit of our natural resources. And how we're going to get those natural resources to market is going to assist you in your healthcare demands, your education demands, your social development demands. So we need to actually get that resource out of the ground and transport it.